It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin a Monday. Gary, what's happening?
I'm doing good, and there's beer in the refrigerator. I didn't bring
Not
it.
anymore.
I didn't bring it. I'm just saying.
Trying to figure out who brought the beer.
When I put my when I put my snack in the refrigerator, I looked and I went, "Is that beer?"
Beer. There's beer in there. I just saw it myself.
There wasn't a sign that said, "Please don't touch. This belongs to someone."
Right. Because I threw that sign away, so it's not there anymore. I think that's unnecessary. When you put beer in a radio fridge, you can't put that sign on it. It's against the law.
It's just great.
Don't people know that?
It's like, wow, there's beer. And it was not Bud Light. It was Coors Light.
Yeah, right. Because Bud Light would be wrong.
Yes. By the way, I did watch a buddy of mine. Remember we had talked, I don't know, maybe it was a year ago when that Jim Brewer special came out. Maybe it was 8 months ago.
Yeah.
And it was like from early 21 or 22. And he just blasted all the COVID stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's another, and a buddy of mine watched it over the weekend and just went, "Hey, you're the one that, you're the one I heard it from. I watched it. Whoa,
yeah.
Man." And I said, "Yeah." And so I went to YouTube. He's got a new one.
Yeah.
He's got a new one where he hits all the gender stuff, all the insanity.
That's the one I was talking about, actually.
The one where he starts out with Trump against Biden.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, he is the modern day George Carlin.
Brewer?
Yeah.
His observation has been pretty spot on. This is the thing that has been interesting about Brewer, because here's a guy, from the Northeast. He's from, New Jersey. And he talks about that. And he also talks about what he has learned. I've never heard him say it. Maybe he said it and I missed it. I used to be a liberal. I used to think this way. I used to think that way. But there is a point where he's talking about guns and he's talking about going hunting, and there's some guys he met in the South that take him hunting. And he says, all right, I may not, he's basically implying, and I'm paraphrasing, I may not think like these guys do, and I may not do what they do, but I love the idea of being able to put something on your table, that you were able to go out and get. I love the idea of being able to protect yourself. He's espousing these views that aren't from a Saturday Night Live alumni, Northeast liberal mindset.
Well, the thing I like about him, in the first 10, 15 minutes, he goes too long on the next bit about his getting the call for, hey, come stay at a hotel for 5 days.
Yeah,
that goes on way too long.
Yeah,
you can tell the audience is there. The audience is there for the stuff that is obviously comical. And we've talked about, people say there's nothing funny today. Well, he just goes. What's Bill Burr? Bill Burr always. To me, it's like Bill Burr. Bill Burr has a habit of hitting one side and then feeling he has to hit the other side.
Yeah,
but a lot of times when he hits the right, it doesn't hit.
It's not as hard hitting as.
It's not as hard hitting.
Well, if you watch his latest special, at the end, he says, "Okay, I'll just I'll wind it up with something that's not controversial," and he goes on this 15-minute abortion rant that it's unbelievable. By the time you get done with it, it's like, what? I was surprised that the special itself didn't get canceled.
Was it more pro-life, you mean?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the case that he made. Oh, my gosh.
And
that's something that,
right.
that in today's world could easily get canceled. Chappelle was different because Chappelle had such a strong following going in. I wouldn't say that about Bill Burr. Bill Burr's following could go either way. Dave Chappelle's core following is solid, and so that support was,
I would
over
say
the top.
the difference is, and the reason I think that Brewer is just so incredibly great is the fact that even Chappelle, will get serious with you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Brewer's just mocking and laughing at everything and making point after point after mocking and laughing and mocking and doing those faces that he does.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, if you would have told me 2 years ago that the best social commentator comedian would be Brewer, that I would even think that for a second after his history, because come on, his history is basically, we all know it. He basically looks high.
Right.
And he'll say it.
No, oh, yeah.
He goes, I look high, I look sleepy. Mm-hmm. And he still does that, in his act. Mm-hmm. And he's also known for the fact that he does a great impression of what's his name from
Joe
AC/DC.
Pesci.
No.
No. Brian Johnson.
Joe Pesci. Oh,
yeah.
God, that's great. Brian Johnston of AC/DC. He does it great. He actually throws one in. He finds a way to get it in, but not the same way that he used to. Mm-hmm. But he threw that in. But as a social commentator, the first 10 minutes of the new one, the one that you told me about, that I had thought, well, were we confusing them? Because I was talking about one. I mean, he's done 2 within a year. Yeah, he's released 2 within a year. But the one that you talked about, where he hits everything and starts out with Trump and Biden, and he always finds a way to, like, hey, look, you may not like the guy. He always has the not that there's anything wrong with it moment in order to try to soften the intensity of it, but increase the laughter, the funny part of it,
right?
Which everybody is in. They are dying laughing.
Oh, it's great.
And the interesting thing is, you hear a ton of women laughter. He did both of them, I think, at the same theater in Long Island.
Yeah, I think it is in the same place, yeah.
And it just was,
because I watched them both, yeah.
I was so impressed. In fact, I was so impressed that when he started going, I didn't watch the whole thing because the bit after the first 10, 15 minutes where we went into, all right, we got the call about, hey, you can get a hotel, and my wife and, the hotel and how she inspects it, and it just dragged too long. It was, if he brought it up for a minute, but it was 5, 6, 7 minutes long.
Well,
and I'm like, okay, that's not going anywhere. You got to get back to the real strong stuff.
What I'll say about it is, it's not a Netflix type special. It's not heavily edited. One of the things about the shows that they do when they do a special, if it's produced by a distributor like Netflix, they will go in and they'll do 2 nights wearing the exact same outfit in the same venue, and you can often look at the audience members and see that different audience members are there for different jokes because they filmed them on different nights. And I don't think that was the case for either of those specials. It doesn't look to be heavily edited, and, just quite frankly, it doesn't have that, that slick production to it. It's just basically, a camera on him, and he just goes.
Yeah, I had to adjust the sound on it.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, on my surround sound
wasn't
I'm like,
the
okay, the sound is not that it's like on your phone or anything.
Right.
I can do it with my surround sound system. You can move all the speakers, so it's like, okay, this sounds better. And then I got used to it, and it was fine. And it's in high definition and all that stuff. But it was. I'm telling you, he's really impressive. Because come on, I mean, the entire the insane radical transgender movement, when you hit it in comedy, is hilarious.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's just so dang.
Well, so many
funny.
things right now are just over the top, ready for, and it's not even. The thing is that there's a lot of there's always been a lot of low-hanging fruit in comedy, politically and socially. And you could just go for it, and it's just, all right, and you get the laugh. And you kind of use that as fillers between the things that are going to get you the real pop from the audience. And his special his routine is just hard-hitting on the issues. It's just boom, 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 boom. I wondered, too, with the later one, okay, the audience came back for this one. They were waiting for this one. And this is something, too, I've heard him on with Larry the Cable Guy on his satellite show, and they were talking about, things, political things and all that. And that was a few years ago. And Larry the Cable Guy, obviously more of a conservative, and Brewer was, Brewer was on to be Brewer,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a difference between that interview and I don't know, that probably goes back maybe 4 years, and what he did on his special even. And I thought to myself, is this one more of these liberals that not just, in stand-up we're seeing it, but not just stand-up, because he's coming in. Brewer can do comedy on a number of things.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He doesn't have to get political.
No, he doesn't.
In fact, he didn't before.
No.
And so I think it's like, oh, come on. There's no way I can't use this. There's no way I can go on stage without using this material, because it's so obvious. One of the things about observational humor, one of the things that made Carlin so great in his time, was that he would connect with you. The laughter comes from, it's funny because it's true. It's funny because you see the same thing I'm seeing. And those are the things right now that are resonating, I think, with a lot of stand-ups. There are still plenty of great stand-ups out there that are doing self-deprecating humor.
Oh, yeah.
And lots of stuff. By the way, saw that Forbes put Jerry Seinfeld on their billionaires list for the first time. And his representative says, yeah, the accounting is inaccurate from you guys. We're not going to get into details. But, you talk about a stand-up comedian who's that's observational humor at its greatest. He doesn't get too political, but you can also see when a reporter, and that happened recently, tried to get political with him and tried to take, and it's like, come on. It's this idea, and Seinfeld was, and I remember we were in our old studios, and Seinfeld came out and said, I can't do college campuses anymore. I can't do it. And I think that was around 2012. And he said, I can't even do college campuses anymore because these kids, it's just the mindset anymore is just ridiculous.
That was one of Brewer's, and this was in the first one, not the latest one, where he talked about his daughter going to college.
Oh, yeah.
And she went to college, and she had all these great aspirations. She was going to learn this and learn that and learn this and learn this. She came back 6 weeks later, and she's basically a communist. I mean, the way he did it, the way that he presented it as a father,
right?
Of a daughter who goes to college, and 6 weeks later she comes back a different person. All the woke stuff,
right?
That had to be relatable to a ton of parents out there who send their kids to college and they come back going, "Who the hell are you?"
Right?
And that was funny, really, really funny. Very quickly, I did watch Roadhouse.
Oh, the new one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On Prime.
Yeah. And
I've never watched UFC. I had no idea who Conor McGregor is or was. I had no idea who he was. He was hilarious.
Yeah.
He was as a insane hitman, basically.
Right.
He was, and Jake Gyllenhaal.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't seen him since October Sky.
Right.
So when I saw his face, I went, "Oh my God, he's aged." And then I went back. Now he's ripped, but he's aged. Then I went back and looked at. When was October Sky? 1999. It's 25 years ago. I went, "Oh, I've aged too."
Yeah.
But it was good. Once you were able to set aside that there's never been a bar like the Roadhouse in the Keys ever.
Right.
And why did you ever pick the keys for this? I have no idea.
Well, and
Even though
by the way, also the level of crime and organized crime in a bar like that was over the top too.
Yes,
for the bad guys in it. But that's what kind of made it the cult hit that it became. The original.
The original. Yeah. And it was like, where are the cops?
Right. Yeah. Right. Expecting Boss Hogg to roll up any second.
And believe me, I worked at a lot of bars, club DJing, and actually at biker bars. And it's like, I've never seen anything close to that. In fact, the worst fight I ever saw, it wasn't really a biker bar, but bikers all came there.
Right.
It wasn't viewed as a biker bar. Were two women fighting.
Yeah.
And they got their nails out and went after each other's face.
Yeah, I mean,
that was not a pleasant. That's the worst fight I ever saw when I was a club DJ.
I played I don't know how many bars, and I don't remember seeing anything more than a push and shove kind of thing. Yeah. And it usually involved a bouncer taking somebody out the door. It wasn't that big of a deal. If there was a fight, it became the talk of the town.
Here's what I never understood: why did he kill the other UFC guy? Because that's how he became basically the bouncer. He got out of the UFC. Did you see the movie? Did you see it?
The new one? No,
yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you. Okay, I thought you.
By the way, spoiler alert.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, I didn't spoil anything.
Yeah. Everybody dies at the end. There you go.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Yeah, just Batman.
We got a great show ahead. 866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. It's not always easy to spring back from the harsh days of winter to warmer months ahead. From de-icing chemicals to hidden debris underneath snow and ice, winter conditions can do serious damage to your truck. Here's a must-do maintenance check to help you minimize downtime and stay rolling. Have your batteries tested and inspect your electrical system for any exposed connections, wires, or butt connectors. Get any exposed components repaired immediately, as the acidic nature of highway de-icers will erode any exposed connections or wires in no time at all.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Alan gave me this story. There's some Just the News. A new study by Roland Berger, a global consulting firm, estimates it will cost over $1 trillion to build out the infrastructure needed to support the electric medium, and heavy-duty trucks. The study was funded by Clean Freight Coalition, which includes a number of trucking industry groups. Trucking fleets and operators of charging stations, according to the study, will need to invest $620 billion into new charging infrastructure.
Yeah.
This includes the chargers, site infrastructure, and utility cost service.
Okay. So I did an interview with a truck stop owner, and they have the charging stations there, and primarily it's four-wheel cars. But a big truck, and it's one that's out there on the road being tested, came in, and they all ran out there. They said, "Oh, so what's it like? What kind of energy are you getting out of this truck? I have to charge for an hour to get another hour down the road. You've doubled the time it takes to get from A to B." Now, that's just one response by one, and this is a company, an EV company, that's doing all their testing on the road. Well, they're doing testing with hauling loads and everything else. You're going to have to stop for an hour every hour? Absolutely not.
Soon they'll be going into a deep dive. Make time. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. You can listen when and where you want if you can't listen live overnight. We've talked about the insanity of electric vehicles in the United States, and it continues here as we were talking about the article in Just the News that electrifying trucking in the United States could cost as much as $1 trillion and burden consumers. A new study warns trucking fleets and operators of charging stations, according to the study, will need to invest $620 billion into new charging infrastructure. This includes the chargers, site infrastructure, and utility cost service. Trucking operators will also need to invest in on-site charging stations, with the study estimating that alone will cost $496 billion. Chargers for heavy-duty trucks, such as semi-trucks, will cost $145,000 a vehicle.
Yeah.
Medium duties trucks will cost $54,000 per vehicle. The Berger study also estimates that utilities will need to invest around $370 billion on grid upgrades to support the increased electricity demand for electric charge trucking. This, according to the study, is equivalent to what was invested on the entire distribution grid over the last 15 years. Mm-hmm. Additionally, local en route charging networks will require an investment of $69 billion, and to support long-haul trucking, a sufficiently dense highway charging network will require another $57 billion to be invested. Given the significant and in some cases prohibitive investments required for electrification, there may be greater value in being open to alternative decarbonization routes as opposed to being prescriptive on technology. The study warns that without sufficient government and regulatory support, freight costs will likely skyrocket, which are costs that will be passed on to the consumer. Even if the funding for all this infrastructure could be found, it's not clear the United States could produce enough electricity to power the charging stations. Well, not if you're electrifying cars at the same time.
Well, that's the thing, is that if you're looking at a Class 8 charger, the charger alone, charging station alone, $145,000 per vehicle. All right? So think about that. Tell me what the truck itself, what the equipment is going to cost, okay? Now you've got to work it into where you've got charging stations that are going to have to be at certain areas where it's amenable to the route itself. In other words, all right, because in moving freight, it's from A to B, shipper to receiver. Now you've got to get, all right, we need charging stations all along the way. Finding a charging station, because right now the big thing in trucking has been for a long time a shortage in parking. Now, those in the truck stop industry will tell you, well, there's not a shortage of parking. There's a shortage of parking in the right place. You may have in one area plenty of parking, and you'll always find a place. But in terms of the major corridors, there's always a problem because drivers have to stop. They're regulated by hours of service. And so they have to find a place. They've got to do planning in order to find the place. They've got to have the time to get there. And if they don't have that, space when they get there, then what? And now you get there and you can't find a charger. Think about that. So you're compounding two things here: the shortage in parking in the right places for trucking, which would be amplified to who knows what degree when it came to finding a charging station. You show up and it shows, okay, yeah, there's a charging station open. Well, it was open. Okay, do you reserve the time? How does it work? Now you got to take all the terminals of all these trucking companies. They're going to have to put in their own charging stations, as this article here from Just the News points out. So now you've got, and then on the state rest areas, those are states that run those. Where's the money going to come from the states? The states have to fund those. The rest areas are going to have charging stations for big rigs. There's no way around that. If you were to mandate this nonsense, then they would have to have charging stations for big rigs. You go to a state, and we know this during COVID, they shut down a lot of the state rest areas because they didn't want to pay for maintaining them. At first it was COVID, and then all of a sudden they shut down because, well, we don't have the cost, we don't have the funding just to maintain them and picking up the garbage and cleaning the restrooms. Now you're talking about adding who knows how many charging stations to those state-run rest areas.
A 2022 study by the American Research Institute estimated that electrification of all freight vehicles, including long-haul trucks, would require 14% of the current electricity generation in the United States. If all vehicles are added to that, such as passenger cars, the figure jumps to 40% electricity that we need more generated in the United States as we are cutting back consistent form of energies.
Right.
And the delusional left is telling us that we can run everything on solar and wind.
Right. Yeah. And so on days when there's, fewer clouds and less wind, sorry, we're not going to be able to get your goods to you. It's just going to, this is a nightmare of an event waiting to happen if you were to mandate this nonsense. By the way, to be clear, when it comes to the emissions of big rigs, you go back to EPA 07, the EPA 07 engines. If you have a diesel pickup truck or a diesel car, you know about this because you know about diesel exhaust fluid and everything else. And of course, that was part of also Class 8 engines, medium and heavy-duty trucks as well were part of that. You go back to the emissions standards set forward, and it started with EGR back in right before 2003. The deadline was October of 2002. And then you go through EPA 07 and then Common Rail and everything else and to where we are today. The emissions coming out of a newer big rig are cleaner than the air going in. They're filtering the air. This is how stringent it's gotten. And the emissions standard set forth, in fact, someone described it this way, and this goes back several years. One expert that I talked to described it this way. It's like taking the strike zone in baseball, down to a 1 inch by 1 inch square. That's how much they have, reduced emissions in terms of big rigs. The day of, not that you don't see an older truck out there billowing black smoke. Sometimes you do see that. That's rare. The newer trucks, you don't see that.
Yeah, I don't get my secondhand, diesel smell anymore when I'm driving down the road as much.
I hate that. I hate that I don't get it.
Same with me. I love that smell. I was at the driving range the other day, or at the golf course that has a driving range, and it was like the guy who's taking the green fees and everything else.
Yeah.
He's also selling beer and cigars.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you're selling cigars now? I go, everybody wants to smoke a cigar. You want one? I said, no, I'm a secondhand cigar smoker. I go, that and diesel smell I love.
Yeah, right, exactly.
but I can't smoke one. But when you they put this in there, anticipating California's thirst to electrify all aspects of the. I know you got to bring California into it, right?
Just drives me crazy.
Anticipating California's thirst to electrify all aspects of the transportation sector, the American Research Institute produced a study in December on the cost to California's trucking industry to go full electric. The study concluded that with the cost of the trucks, the needed infrastructure, and the state's sky-high electricity rates, consumers will ultimately pay way more for products to cover the expense. That's the other thing, adding to inflation.
Well, that's it. I mean, you don't look. This is the way it goes. We need freight delivered. If you walk into a grocery store and we saw this on a by the way, it is a very small scale, and it was mostly toilet paper during COVID. You go in and it's like, oh my gosh. Remember the panic around that?
Oh,
it was the panic that made it worse, actually.
Yeah.
And then they got to, okay, you're limited to only 2 rolls per household per week or whatever. Okay, I may have exaggerated that point. But 1 square, back to the Sheryl Crow comment, you were limited in how much you could buy because people were, overreacting to it. We're all freaking out about it. Now imagine that, because it's not just the toilet paper. It's my dad was a truck driver after his military career, and he delivered pharmaceuticals, prescription drugs. It's all of these things. If you looking at anything around you, at some point it touched a truck. At some point it had to get on a truck and get to your door, get to the store, get to the pharmacy. And you have to pay that cost. Shipping costs are, remember back in the day, plus shipping and handling. I don't know what handling was. Well, handling was loading the truck. But the idea of purchasing something, it is a compounding cost that goes along with it. When we see the cost of diesel go through the roof, when we see, any of that, this is part of the supply chain that we have. It's amazing that we have it, by the way. And you look at companies like Amazon, you look at other companies, Walmart did this back with Sam Walton's idea of having his own proprietary supply chain. Amazon has kind of basically done the same thing here now, except they bring it all the way to your door. Those kind of things that we rely on every single day. Then if that were the case, then expect that your Amazon Prime membership is going to be, look, it's only $10,000 a year.
No, like these new stadiums, you'll get a personal shipping license.
Yeah.
You have to pay $50,000 for 30 years,
right?
On top of the shipping, on top of the yearly fee.
Exactly.
There'll be a personal shipping license that everybody will have to get. They say here, the American Trucking Association, trucks move nearly 73% of all the nation's freight by weight. Now, I think what they're saying is, if you take, because they don't, I look at it and go, well, it depends. Don't trucks ship everything? But you have trains that will ship at a particular portion. But then again, if you're talking about things like coal, odds are trucks aren't shipping coal.
At some point, there are a few things that go straight to a manufacturing plant.
Maybe some trucks are shipping coal to a short area.
Right.
But the trains are carrying basically the coal and things like that. So if you look at the percentage of all of the shipping everywhere, trucks 73% of it they are shipping, which is huge.
On consumer items, it's it's much closer to 100%.
100%, yeah.
Because that's the thing is that the rail does quite a bit, but eventually it's also got to get to the store, and so outside of manufacturing. That's what you're talking about, raw materials that go to manufacturing, as you mentioned, coal, things like that, that go straight from, rail yards, they'll go straight to ports and everything else. So this is something that it's inevitable we're going to have to deal with, and the brakes have to be put on this kind of nonsense.
We can't deal with it.
Yeah.
It's impossible unless the country says, okay, we're going to natural gas.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, that's what I mean.
Long term,
long term, we have to have a game plan that says, stop this nonsense. We need to be able to look. If you want an EV, go buy an EV, and quit giving money to people for buying EVs.
Well, I would say, based on what we know, because that's something we've been studying for years about the how clean a diesel engine is compared to the way that it used to be. You can make the case, as they're making for EVs, that the EV cars pollute more.
Right, from the tire emissions alone, because we talked about that.
Because of the particulate matter that comes out of it. And now they're finding that the global warming gases that you need to produce the battery is doing the same thing.
Right.
I bet you can make the case that making all trucks EV makes pollution worse, not better.
Can you imagine? Wow.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks for being here this morning. So that's just part of the insanity. You know, we've talked about cars, but when you think about trucks and shipping and inflation and everything else, when you see what the insane left wishes to do and how they wish to destroy the economy, and that's not over-the-top rhetoric at all.
It isn't.
It's just the reality of here we need to increase. If we're expected to go all electric, across the board in trucking and regular vehicles, there's no way we can do it.
It's not possible.
It's impossible to do it.
Yep, and there's no way to get there. There is no magic that is going to get you there.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. Welcome and good morning. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Hi, welcome to a Monday. Hello. Just reading here from Michael Schellenberger that last year, renewables generated less electricity in 2023 than 2022.
I'm shocked.
And it was wind that because solar panels increased, but that's such a small amount.
Right.
You know, we know, for example, wind can provide in Texas. What if it's perfect situation? What 60% of the electricity? When the wind stops or it gets cold, zero.
Yeah. Right.
That's a problem.
Right. And during high winds, they have to shut it down.
And during high winds, exactly.
Right.
And so, actually, even though there were more wind turbines, produced close to 1% less. And so overall renewables, because they're shutting down hydroelectric dams.
Yeah. Right.
You can't do what they're trying to do. And you and I talked about it. It's I think compared to what I'm now paying, that California's average kilowatt cost per kilowatt hour is over double what we pay here in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
You're paying double for electricity. Right. And then we talked about it about 10 days ago. They've come up with this great idea. What are we going to do? Well, we can't. The people are going crazy. You know, how can we keep Democrat control? People don't have to pay their own electric bill anymore.
Yeah.
We'll tax the rich.
Right.
Actually, they're taxing everybody.
They're putting a fee on everyone starting at, what was it, $24,000 a year? If you earn $24,000 a year, there's going to be a surcharge.
Right. Just a surcharge to pay for it.
And, you know, they always do these things under the guise of taxing the rich. The rich will have to pay more. Yeah, but you're going to have to pay more, too. But they're going to have to pay more than you. Yeah, but you're going to be paying more than you did yesterday just because the state says so. Because of the choices made by the state, which are the choices of the people who elect the people who decide these things. These are all choices. It's very simple. You know, the one thing about other forms of energy, stuff that's, you know, in the ground, we can see it, we can quantify it when we get it above ground and process it, and we can say, we have exactly this much. We can't tell you how much sun there's going to be. I mean, we can tell you when the sun's going to be up. They've pretty much gotten that down. That's the one part of the forecast, your weather forecast, that will always be accurate. When the sun is going to rise and when it's going to set. Those are things. What they can't tell you is how much cloud cover there is. It drives me nuts when they do the thing on the you and I follow a lot of, you know, the van life thing, which lasted about, I don't know, a year. during COVID. But it's always interesting because I now have an RV, and I learn a lot of these things, and I think it's always interesting when they say, okay, we're going to put these solar panels on. And I watch this guy from a solar panel company, and, it's not meant to power an entire, 2,000, 3,000 square foot home. It's for your RV or your van, if you're living in a van down by the river. And so it's the guy says, and it always drives me crazy. Yeah, well, this one, it can still, if you put and they did this test where they put their hand over it, just the size of an average human hand was depleting the energy output of that solar panel. I know how these things work, but then you have to, again, all right, now let's take that on the grand scale of a grid and cloud cover, right? Things you can't quantify. We can quantify when we when we process oil and we've got it. We can quantify raw crude. We can quantify gasoline, diesel fuel, natural gas. All these things we can say, this is how much we have available for use. You can't say that with wind or solar. You can't do that in any predictable way, and you'll never be able to quantify it and go, yeah, if it's always with an asterisk, if the sun is out, if the conditions are right.
Yeah, you don't run a grid that way.
No, you can't run a grid.
Hopefully, we'll have enough electricity for you. Hopefully.
Well, Newsom comes out, after using I don't know how many petroleum products on his hair, and he does, I'm just saying, and he comes out and he said, maybe it's none, I don't know. He comes out with the 2035 EV mandate, and it wasn't, what was it, a few days after that when they said, by the way, this afternoon between 1 and 4 p.m., don't be charging your EVs, you evil planet-killing EV drivers.
Oh, two points here.
Yeah.
I realize why Newsom's popularity isn't there.
Oh, why is that?
Because remember, I originally said, geez, everybody looks at him and go, okay, he's in, late 1980s, early 1990s. What is his name? Pat, the guy.
Pat Riley?
Pat Riley.
Yeah.
No, you know who he is? You know why people don't want him?
The Joker without makeup?
No.
Oh.
He's Robert De Niro as Don Corleone in Godfather 2.
Oh,
a young Don Corleone.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like, okay,
right.
That's why.
Right, there you
He
go.
looks like a mob boss.
Yeah,
I had it all wrong. And the other thing is just something, when you just mentioned about, I saw this last week. And I burst out laughing because it's something I never thought about before. And it was, again, talking about this manufacturer of Class B vans.
Right.
For, the RVs,
right.
the vans out there. And he says, we don't have solar panels on the top. He said, we basically just have the generator and a large, large lithium batteries on there. And the reason we don't is to use the solar panels, you need to sit out in the sun all the time.
You're in the shade.
If you're sitting out in the sun all the time, your air conditioning's running all the time. It completely defeats the purpose.
Well, there's that, and there's also if you have an RV and you're parked, in a good space, you're probably under a tree. Those are the other things.
Right.
By the way, that was the other part of this install on this van thing. And it was like, our solar panels are much more efficient now, and we're installing these new ones on that this user had on their van. And now we've got these new, and the thing is, and then they started talking about, if you're parked under a tree. Well, you want to park under a tree. Well, what are you talking? And then the other point you just made, and that is, but if because the RVs are not energy efficient. The walls, the heat comes and the cold comes, it blows right through those. Now, I've actually, the one that I bought was used to be owned by this engineer, and he was really great, and he actually beefed up the insulation. Even still, if you're parked in the sun, you're going to be using all of that energy. I have an onboard dual generator, natural gas or gasoline. If I'm not at a hookup site, if I don't have shore power, and so those are the things that you look at and say, what are we doing here? This really is a children's thing. You know, it's interesting. My speaking of which, my youngest, number 8, is going to be 5 on April 2nd. Okay, and he's got one of these. It's a Dodge Viper, little electric cars. You know, now his dad, and I support him on this, is thinking about beefing up the engine. We're always thinking about beefing up the engine, just what we do. But it's right now it's run by a battery. Now, he knows he's got limited, not even 5 years old yet, and he knew this when they got it, when he was about to turn 4, I think. I think he was 3.5, in fact. I think it was Christmas. He would have been 3.5. He knew, well, we got to keep the battery charged, and even then, I'm limited on how far I can go in my car. We took him to a little race with other kids. By the way, all the other kids were cheaters. I'm just going to say that. And you're not supposed to have a battery that big, dude. No, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But he knew, because his dad had a conversation with him, said, hey, you know, this is the battery we have, and this is how fast the car can go. This is how long you can use your car after we charge the battery. You know, those are the things that come into play that we all know. Children know these things. You know, I think it's, you know, it used to be for those who had babies out of the maternity ward of any hospital, they'd send you home with a little bit of formula if the mother wasn't breastfeeding. They would send you home maybe with a little bit of, kind of a starter package that usually got you through 2 or 3 hours, a few diapers, that kind of thing. You might see something like that. Well, these days, babies are sent home with cell phones because that's how early kids are getting cell phones. Newborns, I'm pretty sure, are getting cell phones from the hospital when they're born. Kids understand that technology. They grow up around the technology now. They're born into the technology. This is child's play, this idea of trying to get enough energy to support what we need. We all know how it works from the beginning now at every age, and yet we're still doing this childish math that says, oh, yeah, we can force the world to drive EVs, nothing but EVs, including eventually electric big rigs, and we can get it all done. And we have you and I talked about providing the electricity, and we've also talked about, over the years, providing the raw materials to build these things. It's never been done in the history of the world where we have gone from an energy that was
more efficient and productive,
and then to a less efficient energy. And it's also never been done in terms of the percentage of what you would have to do ramping up the raw materials alone, the production, the mining of the raw materials. I mean, globally, with all, 8 billion of us working on nothing but mining, you wouldn't be able to get it done. You wouldn't be able to process the raw materials required to get this done.
We used to get people angry when we would say, because remember when people, I don't get any response where people, I did get a response from a guy who said, well, I like my EV because my wife, she only takes it to work and back, and we don't take any long trips, but it fits our needs. And I didn't want to get into an argument with him, but my thing would be, well, Ford lost $64,000 on a vehicle last year. Would you be willing to pay $30,000 more for that?
Right.
And I guarantee the answer would have been, well, they might have lied and said yes, but I know the answer would be no. They're all subsidized. But we used to bring up the thing, well, the way it's going, let's go back to horse and buggy.
Right.
Because if you got horse and buggy, then you don't need an internal combustion engine or batteries at all.
Right.
Because it's much more because it's not much more efficient, but it's cheaper.
Right.
Which it wouldn't be in the long run because of how unproductive it would be. But you made the great point. This is the first time in the history of mankind that we have been forced by a government to use technology that is not as great. We're using antiquated technology.
Right.
And so we're actually government is forcing us to be less productive and less efficient. And they're lying to us because they're saying, we've seen across the board, if you do this, everything's going to be cheaper.
Right.
Well, that's a lie.
Right.
Nothing's going to be cheaper.
Right.
And then when they say, well, yeah, look at the cost here of an EV. Well, that's not the full cost. You're subsidizing it.
Right.
They're lying by omitting the taxpayer subsidies. People who don't buy the vehicle are paying for people who buy the vehicle.
Yes,
and
exactly.
the people that buy the vehicle are a lot richer than the people who can't buy the vehicle, who are footing the bill. And the public itself can't afford something that's less efficient and productive than what's currently on the market. It's pure insanity.
Right.
Just insane.
And we all know it. We can all see it. Look, if you want to drive an EV, great.
Go ahead.
Drive an EV.
Well, you can.
No government subsidies here.
You can have a transportation mode if you wish to that's less efficient and less productive.
If you want to walk to work, if you want to take a bike, there's a guy that used to go through my neighborhood, and you would see him in the morning, and he's on one of those sit-down bikes, that's got it's, I don't know if they even call that a bike. I don't know the name of it, but you sit down in it.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like low to the ground like a golf, and this guy's flying. And I used to see him a few times a week. I don't see him much anymore. I don't know if he moved. I don't know what happened. But this guy would, every day he's like footing it to work, and it's like, all right, great, cool, whatever.
That doesn't work on a Midwestern spring day like yesterday or the day before. That snow was. Yeah, snow was. It doesn't work too well there.
Well, and in Texas, you're probably going to get to work or home, whichever way you're going, and you're going to be pretty sweaty. You're going to be that guy in the office
or dead.
Yeah, maybe.
On Texas roads.
Well, I mean, I always wondered because he was so low to the ground. I was like, dude, you got to get a flag or something on that.
866-9D-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Most owner-operators leased to larger carriers are paid on a per-mile basis or a percentage of revenue per load. The per-mile basis is most prevalent among larger fleets, percentage at smaller. Pay per mile tends to dominate discussions about pay just because it's easier to measure, and pay per mile often is wrongly used as the deciding factor in leasing to a carrier. While pay per mile can be a vital factor, it's not a cure for every ill, nor does it mean a big settlement check is coming an owner-operator's way. Why? Because pay per mile always must be considered in balance with gross revenue as well as total costs. Gross revenue can include flat mileage pay that varies by length of haul, percentage revenue pay, and more. Most importantly, though, for every revenue dollar generated, only part of that dollar is profit. But for every extra dollar of cost saved, the entire dollar contributes to profit. Knowing and understanding your cost to operate is fundamental to understanding the true value of any pay package. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. When you were talking about, when we were talking about that fee in California for electricity that would be based on your income.
Right.
And it's like, so you're going to have this utility, the state utility that will know, and you have to tell them how much you make.
Right. They're going to have to go in and see your tax records.
Right. It was like, what? Well, it made me think of just some of the response over the weekend, and this is really, it's a couple of weeks old. I first saw it from a place in Western New York outside of Buffalo that was charging in a restaurant bill a kitchen appreciation fee.
Yeah,
and restaurants are starting to do this now, and they're anywhere between 2 and 10% is of the total of whatever you buy, and the reason is they're having trouble finding kitchen staff. They can't find cooks.
Yeah.
And so they're and people are throwing a fit about it. And the restaurant owner, well, we itemize it so people understand the costs that we have. And so I'm looking at this was on social media, and I'm looking at some of the responses, and the best one was this one woman that answered, and you just wonder, you just sit there and say, people are completely clueless. She said, this has to stop. They need to start paying those chefs and those cooks and those kitchen staff a living wage and not pass it on to us.
Yeah. Sorry. There's no way to do that. You're being delusional.
It's like these people have
You're being delusional.
They have no idea how anything runs.
No.
They have no idea.
Right. No, I mean, that's it. And they think being a restaurant owner, that all of the people that own restaurants are super wealthy. That's not the case either.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You know, the one of the best things I saw that made me laugh like crazy, and it was some liberal publication talking about. Remember when you heard last week broke Don?
Yeah.
That Biden was using that.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting all. It's like Biden's going to get more forceful now. He's going to get more aggressive.
Yeah.
He's going to start calling Trump names. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, so the new thing for the Biden campaign is let Biden be Trump.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do, and the fact is he can't do it. I mean, the whole broke Don goes, well, let's put it this way. When you say broke Don, people say, well, what are you talking about? What's broke Don about? You know, right? What are you actually, referring to? Well, you're referring to what Frank Luntz, you saw Frank Luntz on CNN, said, Democrats are idiots. Why are they doing this?
Right.
You know, why are they doing if she goes after his property, he's going to be elected president of the United States.
Yes.
He said, don't you understand this? How can Democrats basically be so stupid? Let me hit this. This is what he said. Here we go.
All right, Frank. The politics of this. Folks in the Biden campaign are already starting to refer to Donald Trump as broke Don, which is interesting. And then there is the possibility that the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, would start seizing assets, maybe even buildings. How do you think that would play?
I want you to remember this moment, and don't forget it. If the New York Attorney General starts to take his homes away, starts to seize his assets, it's all going to be on camera. Pundits are going to sit there and scream about this. This man cannot be elected. You're going to create the greatest victimhood of 2024, and you're going to elect Donald Trump. If they take his stuff, he's going to say that this is proof that the federal government and the establishment and the swamp in Washington and all the politicians across the country and the attorneys generals and all of this, that this is a conspiracy to deny him the presidency. He's going to go up in the polls just like he went up every single time they indicted him. The indictment, let's not talk about whether it's justified or not, but it will prove the things that he's saying on the campaign trail, and he will go up, and it may just elect him president. Do not forget that. And I say this to the Attorney General right now. If you play politics on this, this is what the secretaries of state did in Colorado and what they did in, I believe it was Maine. His numbers went up in both states. I don't understand. I'm almost speechless in how pathetic the opposition to Trump has been and how completely misguided. And this is a perfect example of it.
What do you think about that?
I mean, my biggest question, this is the beauty of Frank having his job, which I don't have, is that happened, what you're talking about, Maine, Colorado, when you're talking about what happened in a primary. And while I don't disagree with the optics, I've spoken to people inside Trump world who are saying, instead of bankruptcy, we sit in the peace. come to Trump Tower, please. We'll have cameras there. We'll have that fight. We'll win that optics battle. I think the bigger question is, in a general election, and given the fact that the Biden campaign has really latched on to this in a way that they haven't in most legal issues.
Broke
that he's
down.
dealt with.
I've been surprised to hear that.
He was joking about it last night at a fundraiser as well that was off camera, whether or not that rise in the polls can carry into a general election audit. And you'd know better than, I mean, you're talking to people, you'd know better.
How is Donald Trump beating Joe Biden when he's got 85 indictments that still exist? Felonies. How is he beating Joe Biden with the economy getting better and things cleaning up? Okay, you got, it's still have inflation, you still have got immigration. Trump is leading, and in the 7 swing states, Trump is up by the margin of error in 5 out of 7. Why is that happening? Because his critics are stupid, and they're running a horrible campaign. And for those people who do not want Donald Trump back, they should be thankful that the people who are orchestrating his loss are as pathetic, and they don't understand the American people.
By the way, they're not, if he doesn't understand it, he hasn't been paying attention to liberalism.
Right.
Rage is everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you're right. Rage and anger means everything. That's why they loved. Think about this. The media all loved the State of the Union address.
Oh, yeah.
They said, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. I don't remember the last time a president didn't get a bump out of the State of the Union address.
Right.
They love rage. They love anger. That's what fuels them. Mm-hmm. They don't understand it doesn't fuel the American public. And when I saw the excitement, good, they're calling him broke Don, and this is going to work. And you had, I forgot who it was that came out that Mark Cuban said, he's not broke. Nobody has $500 million in cash.
Right.
No billionaire keeps $500 million in cash around.
And after the social media deal was approved, now he stands to be even not broker.
Was it $3.5 billion?
$3.5 billion that he stands to make off
and that
the deal.
went through. And I heard he might get the money this week.
Right.
And then he may have the cash.
Well, exactly. Well, I know that there was one financial analyst that was saying it would be on hold for 6 months, but he could borrow against it. If he's got in other words, if it goes through based on the shares that he owns, he can borrow because that's a solid deal. If you want to borrow against that, $3.5 billion, you could, any lender would do that because they know that those shares would, be good.
Well, I will say this is where they are stupid, and that's the fact that they don't understand that the American people have figured out that the Democrats are trying to get prosecutors who don't actually care about the law and judges who actually don't care about the law.
Right.
And find friendly juries like in D.C. that are 95% Democrat that don't care about the law to basically make up a law that's never been used before, take current law, pervert that current law, get a conviction in order for Trump not to win.
Right.
Even if we all know the convictions will be overturned in federal court down the road. That it is a perversion of the system, that the law doesn't mean anything anymore,
right.
That prosecutors don't care about the law on the left. Judges don't care about the law. One of the most interesting things, and I think it was, I think Trump put it out, and it's something that we had said early on about Letitia James, and her, going after Trump for fraud. And Trump made the case over the weekend, and it's something that case we made and laughed about it, but it's a great point. The judge committed fraud by saying that his case is based on an example of Trump stating that Mar-a-Lago is worth hundreds of millions of dollars when he believes it's only worth $18 million. Well, the judge committed fraud in order to prosecute Trump, and he used that as an example to justify it. Well, he's committing fraud, and everybody pointed to the CNN panel last week talking about how Trump's Mar-a-Lago is worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
And nobody was saying that when the judge came out and said it was worth $18 million. But if you're going to take that law and say that is committing fraud, then the judge is committing fraud. The judge is breaking the law by the standard of James.
And his basis for the decision,
right,
that
to
was
prosecute.
that was a fraudulent number because he didn't do his due diligence. There's a couple of words for you. And by the way, not only did he not do his due diligence, he deliberately undermined and underestimated the value of that by not even taking, because it would have been one thing if he said, I went to 3 different analysts, real estate analysts that are familiar with the real estate there, and these are 3 different comps, and here it is. And then it came back at $18 million, which, by the way, it wouldn't have come back at $18 million, not even close. If that would be one thing. He didn't do that. It's worth 8. He just threw this number out there. He deliberately went out of his way to ignore the process, which is fraudulent in nature by Letitia James' standard.
Yeah, by that standard. You know, I was talking to my dad over the weekend. I don't know if we talked about it or I talked about it when you were gone last week, but I said, does that mean that every dealership is sued for fraud for MSRPs?
Right. Yeah, we talked about it.
Okay, we did talk. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were here or not, but you think about it, MSRP, nobody ever pays MSRP. So what is that doing? That's putting up a fraudulent price to start the negotiation. How's that different than what Trump did?
Right.
Does MSRP have to go away in the state of New York?
Right.
And
Well,
by the way, I'm being serious based on how I'm not joking about it.
How do you negotiate anything in business? How do you negotiate anything as a real estate buyer or a real estate seller? How do you negotiate anything in the state of New York without the threat of being punished for it?
I found the panel here. Here we go, and it's the headline here. CNN 1 month ago, Mar-a-Lago's only worth $18 million. CNN now, Trump should sell Mar-a-Lago for $240 million to pay off part of the judgment. Here we go.
At least 30 days to get any of these properties sold. But the property that you alluded to, Mar-a-Lago, potentially that could be something that could be sold quickly. I think the valuation is something in the hundreds of millions, and I think there could be a buyer for something like that.
And that would be literally, if you're talking about doing that between now and Monday, that's picking up the phone, calling someone, and then literally writing a check.
Yeah, I mean, there could be plenty of international people who want to buy that property. I mean, there's properties that are priced at 150 and 200 million that are nearby that. And Palm Beach is like the NVIDIA, of real estate. It's just shot up like a rocket. And people do want to live there. They've moved there. So I think that would be the best case scenario as to property. If he's trying to sell quickly, I would encourage that.
So, all right, now that's 240 million estimated. I mean, who knows? You know, he's
There you go, 240 million estimated.
Right.
And the main property that the judge brought up in court to defend going after Trump for fraud, he committed fraud in order to prosecute Trump, according to how he interprets the New York state law. Please, any Democrat, tell us where we're wrong on that analysis.
You would have to. I don't, because there's nobody saying that it's only worth $18 million except for that judge.
Right. I love the CNN 204. They weren't saying that. They weren't saying that when this thing started, and the judge said that. They weren't debating. Now, commercial real estate people were saying, well, that's ridiculous. But the whole fraud, again, that's what the judge used to convince the public that this was justified by using his Mar-a-Lago property. It's only worth $18 million.
Right. Donald Trump Jr. posted on X, I think it was that night, said, $18 million? Okay, I'll take 10, please.
Oh, my God, that's great.
I mean, it is just insane how far out of the way they had to go. They still have to go for this whole gotcha thing.
And they have it right there. Estimated Trump property values, and the source is Bloomberg. They're using the Bloomberg source and promoting it on CNN. Estimated Trump property values, Mar-a-Lago, $240 million. Didn't anybody at CNN say, well, wait a minute, the judge says $18 million. Well, wait a minute, isn't the judge doing what he claims Trump is doing? Isn't he prosecuting Trump based on a fraudulent amount that he says he believes Mar-a-Lago's worth?
Right. Ooh, here's a question. What about Bloomberg or Fortune or any of these financial-based media companies who come in and say, our estimate of this person's wealth is this. It came out, the Forbes billionaire list included Jerry Seinfeld for the first time. And a spokesperson for him, his rep came back and said, yeah, the estimates aren't accurate. We're not going to get into the details. But the point is that the Forbes billionaire list, the Forbes or any of the, the estimates of, because remember the thing, was it Bloomberg or Forbes? I think it was Forbes that did the estimate of Donald Trump's net worth in 2016, and they were saying it was lower than what Donald Trump was saying. It's okay. Well, Letitia James, one of them or both of them is committing fraud. Yeah. I mean, the media, if the media puts something out there, well, we believe it's this, we believe it's that. That's fraud, is it not?
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, coming up, we'll tell you how a liberal knows the problems with the Democrats. But I still laugh that the media was like, oh, all right. I mean, he's going to get more aggressive. Biden's getting more aggressive. There he is, calling him broke Don. All you do is amplify what's going on, the lawfare, and the Democrats perverting the law, and how deep it is, how deep it's instilled in judges and prosecutors and even juries to create law that doesn't exist to go after a candidate they don't like.
Right.
Stupid.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. All right. You want to know what Trump should do?
Yeah, what's that?
In order to win? Mm-hmm. I know people are going, we already know. Stick to the issues. Mm-hmm. You've said it a million times. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say anything. I'll let Donald Trump say it.
All right. Okay.
All right. Here's what he put out over the weekend.
All right.
To every American who wants this country to be strong again, safe again, and successful again, our campaign and our movement is for you. Whether you're a Republican, an independent, or a disillusioned Democrat, and there are many, many of them, I think about 70% of their party, I'm asking you to join us on this noble quest to save our country and to make America great again. Right now, we're a laughingstock all over the world. All over the world, they laugh and they think it's funny. We don't think it's funny. We're a laughingstock. This is a movement of patriotism and common sense. Every day, more Americans are joining our cause, including record numbers of African Americans, Hispanic Americans, young people, men, women, people with diplomas, people without diplomas, people that didn't go to high school, people that went to the best colleges in the world, became doctors. We don't have to agree on everything, but we can agree on our nation. It has to be strong again. We need strong borders. If we don't have strong borders and if we don't have free and fair elections, we don't have a country. We don't want illegal aliens invading our country and killing our people. We can agree that we need to support our police officers. I'm going to get them immunity so that when our police officers stop crime, they're not going to be destroyed by the radical left. and get dangerous criminals off our street, and they're going to do it. We can agree that we must end Joe Biden's inflation nightmare and get our economy booming again for hardworking American families. We can agree that we need to unleash American energy. We were energy independent just 3.5 years ago, and that we are not going to ban gasoline-powered cars and mandate expensive all-electric vehicles, which are all going to be made in China. And you know, they don't go very far. They cost too much money, and they're not for you. But if you want one, you can get one. But you also can get other propulsions if you want. You'll get other propulsions. You'll get gasoline-powered engines. We have so much gasoline. We have more liquid gold under our feet than any other nation by far. But we don't use it. But we're going to start using it. We're going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to get your energy prices down. We're going to get your gasoline prices down. And we're going to give you a choice of cars. You can buy energy. You can buy anything you want for a great price. And that's what we want to take advantage of. We want to take advantage of our liquid gold that we have right under our feet. We can agree that we need to keep America out of foolish foreign wars, and we can agree that it is time to restore free speech in America. Above all, we can agree that this November, we need to fire crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country, and turn the page on his nightmare presidency. Our country has gone to hell. We're going to bring it back, and we're going to bring it back fast. So please join us, and together we will make America great again. It will be about putting America first, but we're going to make our country better than ever before.
Boom. Boom.
Boy, I wonder who has been saying what he just did for the last 5 years.
By the way, that's not why I was gone Thursday and Friday. I didn't go help the former president put that message together.
Well, we get people screaming at us all the time when we say this is what he should do.
Yeah, and
well, he just did what we've advised him to do all the time. Stick to the issues, and you don't need a lot of issues there.
It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. And right now, again, we're in the advantage that Trump has over Biden is the economy versus where we are now, the non-inflationary period. I mean, there was inflation, but it was not anywhere near what we're seeing now. There are so many things right now that are pushing Americans to the brink. I saw more articles while I was traveling, and it was over and over again how families just don't have any choices. There's, they've cut all they can cut. They're not making ends meet. Now having multiple generations live under one roof is now a thing. And we watched this happen, by the way, in other countries, specifically Japan. It wasn't just cultural that you saw that. It was also because of the massive recession that was going on in Japan and what was going on economically. And you see this now with the United States, where I really don't know. The cost of everything's skyrocketing. More talk about the cost of homeowners insurance, auto insurance, and everything else that's skyrocketing. And you're seeing the response to that is, well, okay, something has to give. Election time is critical, and the advantage that you have here and the unique situation that we're in here at what I believe and I've been saying is a critical crossroads for us all. These are all choices that we're making.
Well, but
inflation was a choice.
But it's also a choice what Donald Trump is making. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump decided to make the choice there to do the right thing to win. Mm-hmm. He also makes the wrong choices a significant portion of the time. Mm-hmm. If he sticks to this, he makes the right choice. The only other thing I would suggest that all Republicans do, is break down 4 or 5 of the things and say, this isn't a situation. Understand that in this country, this is not a situation where the president can't do the right thing for the problems that organically come up. Mm-hmm. This is a president, and this is a political party that created the problem. We're not going to create a problem. We're going to solve problems.
Right.
Now, one of the problems we're going to solve is getting the Democrats out because they're creating the problems. They're creating inflation. They're creating the skyrocketing cost of automobiles because you still can't make a profit on an electric vehicle. And if these companies can't make a profit, they're out of existence. That's what I meant by bloodbath, that we can't continue where a government tells companies that they must produce something that can't be produced. He needs to go in and say, look, we can't run the economy on solar and wind. We have to have fossil fuels. We cannot have the gas prices that California is having. They are creating these problems. We're not going to create problems. We're going to solve problems.
Right. And that's it. He talks about, and he has before talked about the revenge. It's the media wants to know, well, what kind of revenge you get? My revenge is going to be fixing the things that are broken.
That was your correct call. Now, what's the one thing that Democrats believe they have? If you watch the Sunday morning news shows, you saw it.
The whole election was stolen.
The whole election was stolen. That's all they've got all the time. You saw Jim Jordan. I saw Jim Jordan, just a clip, and again, I will wait to see if he says that they took the clip out of context. But they asked him, he said, about the stolen election. He said, well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, that there were problems. There were things that happened in that election that should not have happened. And she said, well, they're not saying that. And he just was in complete silence.
Well, I would have said, and it's very simple to answer a situation. Well, they're not saying that. I'm not them. You're interviewing the wrong person. If you want to talk to somebody who said that, then you can talk to somebody who said that. I didn't say that.
And he was lost for something to say. Mr. Jordan, if you're not prepared to go on 60 Minutes, number one, I don't see any reason. If I'm a political consultant, Biden's not doing any interviews. Kamala Harris is destroying herself when she does anything. In fact, send her down to Puerto Rico again so they can protest and mock her, and she's clapping like an idiot, having no idea that they're mocking her.
Right.
But she was horrible over the weekend. Biden won't do any interviews.
No.
You don't need to go on 60 Minutes.
Nope.
And 60 Minutes, they tape and they edit.
Yep.
And don't do it. But Jim Jordan was lost. But the one of the problems is, look, there's been an evolution in the whole stolen election thing. As you noticed, it went from stolen election to rigging. You even saw Trump about 3 weeks ago doing an interview, and we had mentioned it, where they said the election wasn't stolen, the election wasn't stolen, the election wasn't stolen, and he goes, it was rigged, and he said, he said, but in Georgia with the votes, she said they counted all the votes. He goes, not the right way, and the 51, the 51 intelligence agents. Well, what he's doing is now he's evolving from stolen election to the rigging of an election, and the rigging of an election is, for example, the governors who went beyond what the courts finally slapped them down for, saying you didn't have a right to do that. You didn't have a right to extend, early voting
during COVID. Yeah,
during COVID. The problem is they realize, and across the board, Carrie Lake realizes you can't sell the stolen election to the public. They've already made up their mind. If you come out and do what Trump said there, we need safe and honest elections or whatever. Everybody relates to that.
It goes back to not engaging. Don't engage.
Right. Don't engage.
Dan Rather's people sat me down for 45 minutes trying to get me to say something negative about something, and they ended up using exactly 0 seconds of what I said because they couldn't get anything out of me. And that's the art of being able to control it. You're not going to control the questions they answer or they ask. You're going to control the answers, and it doesn't matter whether it's a live setting, recorded setting, or on stage. Now, you don't need to do 60 Minutes. You don't, as you mentioned, you don't need to do NBC. Look, it used to be when Tim Russert was alive that you had to go through that Sunday morning, at least that Sunday morning show, in order to get to the White House. You were going to have to sit down across from Tim Russert because he was someone we believed that practiced actual journalism. He was going to play devil's advocate. It didn't matter who you were, and he was going to bring up things, and he was going to use the facts. And here's what you said here, and now you're saying something different. Explain that.
If the Republicans are going to shift and the campaign's going to shift from stolen to rigged, you better damn well explain what rigged means and do it all the time, because I saw the headline last week. Trump says the 2024 election is already rigged, implying, because people go stolen, rigged, they don't know the difference. And the Republicans are, and the campaign is morphing from stolen to rigged. And rigged means what's going on with Trump right now, that election interference that is going on right now across the board. You need to explain this election is rigged because of what they're, just don't say rigged, explain, what you mean, because the majority of the public does not believe that the election was stolen in 2020.
Right.
They don't.
Right.
Your base might, they don't. Your base you have, you go after the rest. As we said, everybody, we can go through the 25 minutes of people talking about the stolen election of 2000 and the stolen, and it wasn't stolen. Right. And the stolen election of 2016, that it wasn't legitimate, because not legitimate means it was stolen. And Hillary's still making that point today. So you got to find a way to answer the question. Or if you know that's the only question they're going to ask, you don't have to do interviews with the media. But if you explain what rigged is, explain it every time, because people don't know what the difference is. Stolen, rigged, I don't know. Rigged is different than stolen, but you may not say that. But Trump is still at his rallies saying the election was stolen. If you do that, that's going to come out. If you say it was rigged and here's what they're doing to you right now, look, your goal is not to adjudicate what happened in 2020. Your goal is to win in 2024.
Well,
that's the goal.
And all you have to do is say, hey, look at all the cases against me.
Right.
Look at all the cases against me. If that's not rigging an election, I don't know what is.
Yep. Don't go in the past. Go to the present and the future. And that's how you win.
And Democrats are looking at it going, that they're already, because they start seeing the polls shift since the beginning of February especially, and they start building out their whole, the thing is rigged, like they did in 2016. He wasn't legitimate. They assigned a special prosecutor on their lie that the election was rigged.
By the way, that's what you should hit too.
Yes.
Excuse me? You're questioning, number one, you ask other people, I'll tell you what I think here, but then you just opened a can of worms. I would have been blasting, when Jordan, I would have been blasting Leslie Stahl saying, excuse me?
Did you ask Nancy Pelosi in early 2017 when she said he wasn't legitimately elected when she was saying that?
No, I would have hit on Russia collusion and hit her. You 60 Minutes. The Russia collusion thing went on for 3 years. It was a lie.
They assigned a special prosecutor.
They assigned a special prosecutor. It was a lie. It was created by the Hillary campaign. Where's your report on that 60 Minutes?
Right.
Throw it back in their face.
Yep.
That was a lie created by the Hillary campaign. I haven't seen your story on that yet. We know it. We know what happened. During that. What was the special prosecutor for that?
Mueller?
No.
For what?
That proved that what Hillary Clinton did.
Oh, yeah.
I got mine blank.
Yeah. John
Durham. The Durham report showed it. You guys, you never reported it. When was your story? When was your story saying that the Hillary Clinton set up this entire thing in order to set up Trump? Where was that?
Well,
and just blasted.
And what was the result of the Mueller thing?
And when they you do that too. You hit that, then you hit the second one, because the Mueller report, again came up with nothing, and then the Durham report came and showed how it was all set up by the Hillary campaign. You didn't do the story. Well, we're not talking about that. Of course you're not talking about that. You don't want to talk about it because you're in bed with the Democrats. That's why.
Right.
Ramaswamy would do that.
Yeah.
And Jim Jordan, if you're not prepared,
don't
do the damn interview.
I don't know why you would sit down. I don't know where the value of sitting down with 60 Minutes is in the first place.
Neither do I. No idea.
It's garbage.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So, again, just playing that, and it was edited. I mean, there was pre-recorded by Trump. That's how you win the election. Stick to that. Stick to the 3 or 4 issues. What is the goal? Do Republicans want to win? I mean, you see the mess now in the House, complete mess. Yeah, the McCarthy thing really worked, didn't it?
Yeah, it worked. And in fact, it worked so well, let's do it again.
Yeah. That's not going to happen. She was blowing smoke. That's not going to go anywhere.
Nope. But this whole idea of, okay, throw all the bums out. Well, yeah, you're one of the bums.
Yeah. Unless you get more of a majority, you're never going to get anywhere. And the Republicans don't seem to have any interest in actually keeping the House.
You and I talked about this, and we've kind of been on this. We were on this early.
Yeah, we were.
When we were talking about how the elections, this could be different where Trump is greatly outperforming other Republicans. If you go state by state, either in the districts or in the Senate, any of the Senate races, that he could, and that would be a problem for him. And we still believe that there is a likelihood that if he's doing well, that those other Republicans in that state, any given state, would do well and benefit on the down ballot. But the problem is that if they're not performing on their own, it means that the will of their constituents is not behind them, or their supporters, their voters, is not behind them in that kind of way. That's why you want to look at the polls, their polls, versus what Trump's polls are. Election day could change things, again, the effect of the down ballot. But it's a problem if we're not going to, pick the right candidates and then put the right people in office in order for him to get all of these things done, because history will tell you, and it's still fairly accurate, that after that first 2 years, then at that midterm, that he's not going to have, his party will not maintain if they keep the House and get the Senate. And if they get the Senate, it's still going to be a slim margin, and it could be a slim margin in the House even. That kind of stuff has to change.
$866-90 Red Eye. Now's your chance to be the caller. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Well, to show you how easy it is, this was really interesting. Bill Mahr had a very exciting show the other day.
All right.
Because he was making all the points that we made on identity politics and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I may even stop mentioning the past unless I have to mention the past on him and identity politics and conservative blacks and not defending them like he's now going against identity politics. But he had on Kara Swisher, who's a Democrat, used to write for the New York Times, without question a liberal. And you can see she hates what he's saying. He's talking about the Supreme Court, looking at government collusion with the social media companies. Mm-hmm. And if the point I get out of this is if Bill Maher sees it, a ton of independents and a ton of Democrats see it.
Yeah,
because Bill Maher a few years ago was as liberal as you could get.
Yeah, right.
And so the fact is, he sees it and he doesn't like it. Now, he does come more from the old school of liberals that actually did believe in freedom of speech. But here it is, and she really doesn't have anything. And Bill Maher's making our points.
Yeah.
He's making all of our points.
Yep.
Well, after we made them.
Thanks for listening, Bill.
Is he plagiarizing us? No, we already made it clear. We don't care if anybody takes what we...
Yeah, you don't have to credit us.
Right, if we do never have to credit us on anything.
We already know. Everybody gets all their good stuff from us. We already know. You don't have to credit us. We already know it. We take the credit. We We don't ask for you to give it. We take it.
And we thank those News Talk morning people that have written us and said, I get my show prep from you.
Yes, you're welcome.
I get many ideas from you. Actually, that's an honor. But serious, I'm being serious. I could care less if anybody takes verbatim what I say and puts it on their show. As long as the message is out there, that's all I care about.
It's all that. Now, if more Republicans in office would do it.
Yeah, that's the only thing. Yeah, great point. Yeah. Trump campaign,
right.
Listen to us.
Yes. I mean, come on. Keep doing what others are doing.
Democrats don't listen to us.
Right.
The Republicans listen to us.
Or maybe you shouldn't and rethink your strategy,
Not to Democrats.
No. I mean,
Republican.
maybe become a Republican.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Maybe you could learn something.
Yes. All right. Here's Bill Maher and Kara Swisher on Friday. Here we go.
I want to ask you about this case that's before the Supreme Court, Murphy versus Missouri. It used to be Biden versus Missouri. It's a free speech issue. Very interesting to me because I was always on the page during the pandemic that they should not be shutting down debate about medical matters.
Yes, correct.
I was a dissenter on many of these issues, and as the years roll by now, we see that the dissenting opinions on a lot of these things were quite the right ones. Okay.
Although we still don't know. We're not going to know perfectly, but go ahead.
Okay, but we should have been able to argue about whether it came from a lab, which we weren't.
Sure.
Things like that. Natural immunity, whether it was better to go to the beach and get sun and fresh air, as I would have said, as opposed to sitting home and day drinking.
Right. All right.
And putting on weight.
Look, Bill,
they never mentioned that obesity was the biggest factor.
By the way, I just want to say, you should see, she's not happy with this at all. You can just see in her face. She's like furious with this. Here we go. Okay, let's continue.
They have a lot to answer for. Anyway.
They do, but you're in the middle of a plague and a debate that people don't know. And so
yes,
you're going to have
so you should be able to debate it. This is medicine.
You should,
they don't know.
The moment was not. People make mistakes, and science says it makes mistakes.
Well, this is what the lawsuit is about.
Okay.
Because there were two doctors, Jay Bhattacharya and Martin Kulldorff. They're from Stanford and Harvard.
Right.
And they said we were shut down, not always fully, but there are ways to do that. And they're not radicals. They were saying things like we're going too far with school closures. Again, I think has been proved right. My question was always why are your doctors more important than my doctors, the ones I want to listen to? And the social media companies were in the tank with the government, as opposed to what you were just saying before about you're the watchdog and you have been.
Right.
They just did the bidding of the government. That's what.
And that's correct. They did the bit. I mean, that's Bill Maher.
Yep.
He's not us.
Yep.
He's Bill Maher, and you should see when she. But we were in the middle of a pandemic, right? And panic was leading instead of debate of scientists.
That's all he's talking about. The only thing Bill Maher was promoting there is the debate, the two sides, and what she's saying was, well, it wasn't safe to have two sides at the time. That was basically her argument against that.
Because we had this in the panic. Well, the panic was created by there would have been less panic if you could have had the scientific debate instead of the government colluding with the social media to shut it down, and the government, as we now know, going after the authors of the Great Barrington Declaration.
Yes, right.
Fauci, they were how do we go after these people and shut them up?
Right.
Fauci was wrong.
Well, and then
Fauci lied to the American public.
And now we know they worked with social media to shut them down, to say if they, if you're putting this on social media, you should be banned from social media altogether. That this is misinformation. We'll take it down. It didn't matter if it was YouTube, Facebook, Twitter at the time, all of them. If you're going to we're deeming it misinformation. We're not going to have a debate. And in the virtual public forum, because everything was virtual, even your office back then, that was the conversation. That's where all the conversation happened, except it couldn't have two sides, because if you decided that you didn't agree with others, and even if those smartest minds decided that they didn't agree with others, You were carved from the herd, and you were shut down, and you were targeted.
You could see how angry she was, and when you think about it, and this is where the emotion of the anger makes it so you make stupid statements. Yes, but we were in the middle of a pandemic, and right.
Yeah.
So scientists should be able to debate.
Exactly.
When we find out later on that the scientists that were telling us stuff were completely wrong.
It's more. When is it more important to get it right? It's never been more important to get it right than when you're in the middle of a pandemic.
You can tell she's just irritated with him completely. You know, and in fact, she was like, you could see it in her facial expressions.
Yeah.
She was just furious. And then she makes the one point. Yes, but we were in the middle of, because we're in the middle of a pandemic and people are panicking and the government is causing you to panic.
Right.
Because it's the government that was saying, for example, kids have to be out of school.
Right.
You know, we talked about that the few things that remain consistent to this day is that COVID did seriously affect a lot more than the flu and even pneumonia, people that were over 65 with an underlying condition, especially obesity. Mm-hmm. It was very lethal. Mm-hmm. Probably, 1 out of 6, if you had those conditions, you could die somewhere between 15 and 20%. At a point, I think it was. Maybe it's safe to say 10 to 20%, but that's a high lethal rate at that point. Complete opposite for young, healthy people. Right. Complete opposite.
Right.
And yet you had to close down all the schools, and that couldn't be debated at all. The thing, when you see John Stossel did a thing a couple of weeks ago, this guy out in the water in California, nobody's near him, and there's the police in their boat picking him up because he's outside. Right. The people that went to watch a sunset in their own car, they never got out of their car. They're in there. They were arrested. Right. You know, we talk about, remember the people that went to church?
Oh, yeah.
In the parking lot?
Oh, yeah.
And they were arrested. This panic that was created about a virus that, and then the person who didn't care about where the virus attacked the most, Cuomo, and what he did, they were talking about him running for president.
Right.
And he did the opposite of what was correct.
Right.
And so when you look at it, that and the fact is COVID didn't stop the spread, as we know. But the one thing that is true, and many people are trying to make the case it isn't, but COVID does lessen your chance of dying if you get it. If you get it and you're elderly.
You mean the COVID shot?
The COVID shot.
Yeah, you said COVID. But
the COVID shot. Yeah. The vax still helps. Now, are there odds that you could have heart problems or whatever? Yes. But you look at it and say, that's why you don't give it to young people. But old people, yes, they should get it because the odds are greater that they would die from COVID if they're elderly and obese than the odds that they might die from heart problems due to the COVID vax. 866-90-RED-I.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, I mean, you see it. You sensed it out of that Kara Swisher, that she was just so furious. And I understand it's the elitism that exists.
Yeah.
That what we say goes, and if we were wrong, it was just because we cared more.
Right.
We cared more, and there was all this panic going on, and we cared, so we told you what to do. And even though we were wrong, we want to be able to tell you what to do next time, too.
Right.
Without any debate.
Right.
Because we know better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Bernard Goldberg said that in Bias, that they actually believe there's a left and there's a right, and they believe they're the media, and they're not left or right.
Nope.
They're the correct way.
Exactly.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome. How's everybody doing? Welcome to a new week. All right, one more audio cut from Bill Mahr.
All right.
And if you listen to it, it's everything that we have said about identity politics for years on this show.
Yep.
And he basically says Democrats need to stop the racial pandering. It's not helping them. It's hurting them.
Yeah.
And it's something, identity politics, I'll play this first, but when he talks about racial pandering, it's more than racial pandering. Identity politics is racism. It's judging people as a group and not by individuals.
Right. Yep. We've been talking about it for years.
And he gets to that point here in this conversation. Monologue here, as he talks about the racial pandering from Democrats has to stop.
When Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi put on kente cloth, I don't think it earned them one vote for their powerful emotional ties to Ghana. Here in California, we're now segregating kidnapping. Really. California doesn't just have Amber Alerts for missing children. We have Ebony Alerts for black children and Feather Alerts for Native American kids. What is that? We look for them by listening on the ground? Look, even if you like identity politics, this kind of thing is antiquated. From 2010 to 2020, the number of people identifying as multiracial in America went up 276%. 1 in 5 newlyweds now are in an interracial marriage, and that number goes up to 100% in ads for Subaru. You couldn't do a remake of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner today because almost 100% of Americans approve of interracial marriage, especially with rich in-laws. And 95% of white women would leave their husband to marry Idris Elba. Idris Elba, who says, as humans, we are obsessed with race, and that obsession can really hinder people's aspirations. Actress Raven-Symoné agrees. She told Oprah, I'm tired of being labeled. I'm not an African American. I'm an American. She says, I don't know what country in Africa I'm from. My roots are in Louisiana. And you don't have to agree with that. But it's a point of view a lot of people have. It should be respected. Morgan Freeman says the way to finish off racism is stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man, and I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. There's even a movement now to ban racial questions on the census, and many of its leaders are people of color, like Professor Sheena Mason, who says to undo racism, we have to undo our belief in race. The liberal group MoveOn.org, formed in 1998 to urge Republicans to move on from the Clinton impeachment. Today's Democrats should move on from identity politics. It's not working.
There you go.
Yep, it's...
Now, we've talked about the fact that I never saw Bill Maher when conservative blacks were being called Uncle Tom and not genuinely black. I don't remember him defending them.
No, Mia Love, and how she wasn't black, she was red because of her politics. And the continued, by the way, very open, they proudly do this. They go after, still today, black conservatives.
Now, when he said, even if you like identity politics, this is identity politics.
Yeah.
And at the end, he says, this is identity politics.
Well, that's it. And again, they are proud, on the left, they are proud of their racial bias, of their racism. They're proud of, they promote it openly. And it's nothing to be proud of. It's something to be called out, as we have been doing for years, and it's about time that Bill Maher and others see it for what it is.
Well, it's when you say, look, I'm colorblind, we know the reaction from the left is, what do you mean? You don't notice if somebody is black?
Mm-hmm.
Of course I do. I notice somebody may have blue eyes or blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
I don't assess them in any way because of that. That's what colorblind means. I don't look at the color of your skin and judge you. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the left can't see it, and we've stated this before, identity politics comes from the fact, I don't think it's a coincidence that the Democrats practice identity politics, which is racism, and then have their racist guilt that we need to pay reparations.
Yeah. Right.
I think that they believe that. You know, you talk about white guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, you believe in identity politics. You're the one that's making the judgment. You're the one that judges people by the color of their skin or
Right.
their gender.
Right.
Or whatever. You're the ones that are making those decisions. Of course you feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know it's wrong, yet you continue to do it anyway. It's where we went back a long time ago when you and I finally one day said, oh, we finally realize that any position that we have, why someone will call us a racist. Because we're like, it's the opposite of how do you come to that conclusion on anything that I say is racist? And it's like, oh, you believe in identity politics.
It's how you think.
You're a Democrat. That's how you think. And you think since you think that way, that everybody else thinks that way. So when someone tells you, I'm colorblind, color doesn't matter to me. And you're like, well, of course it does. Of course it does. See, of course. Well, you're telling me you don't recognize color? Of course I recognize color.
It's like saying, if you were to say, love is blind. What, you don't see the other person? You sound moronic.
Yeah, exactly. But the reason they think that way, or the reason they're throwing that accusation at you, is because that's how they think. And it's, again, another part of the communication of Republicans where they fail miserably. They should be confronting identity politics, not defending, because Republicans seem to always be on the defensive about race. They should be on the offense saying, Democrats, stop being racist. Stop practicing identity politics. I said this for the longest time, and exactly what Bill Mahr and those black leaders he mentioned, Morgan Freeman and more, even though he was an actor, but still very important, is unless you say race doesn't matter, you're never going to get rid of racism ever.
Well, and that's
ever.
It. You know, I talk about my friend who has since passed, but for years we were friends, well over 2 decades, and we had this one conversation I'll never forget. And he said, the American media is obsessed with racism. They pull it out of nowhere. He goes, I just have trouble. And he was British, and he says, I have trouble. And he lived here for years. I just have trouble figuring out why they do that. Well, then when you realize that they're trying to carry the water for the left, it's purely political. Because if they can deem one entire side as racist, you know, it's because it's reprehensible. If you think of what racism is, it's reprehensible. It's why we've been on it with the left for so long. But for them, they see it as a tool of, well, if we can deem the entire other side as racists, then and we can get away with it over and over, and still today, to a certain extent, they convince people of that, then we've won the battle. We don't ever have to talk issues again.
Was it when the University of Missouri, the riots were going on? Remember Carrot Top, the professor?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that when they were talking about the fact of safe spaces and they need segregated dorms?
Right.
Well, that's again, shows the racism of liberalism today. But also, the very important point to that, that if things can remain segregated, if they can segregate, then they can become eternal victims.
Yeah, right.
We become eternal victims because we have to be permanently segregated because we can never be safe with any white person there because that's where critical race theory comes in. All white people are culturally racist to the point where it's almost in their DNA. We go back to Obama. Remember when Obama said racism is in your DNA? It's like, oh, my God.
You can't change it. Right.
That's racist. That's racist. That was a racist statement right there.
Well, that's the basis of critical race theory.
Right.
You know, of if you're white, look, you're going to be an oppressor. You can't change it. You're racist. It's in your DNA, and you can't change that. And if you're a person of color, you're always going to be a victim and be
critical race
oppressed.
theory doesn't say DNA. They say it's culturally to the point where it's the same as being the DNA.
But that's and that's my whole point. It is the same thing. For them, it is the same thing.
Yeah, it is. It's a way of saying it without throwing the DNA. But Obama just threw the DNA in there. He just goes, but...
Yeah, but that's what they want you to believe. That's the whole basis of critical race theory.
Right.
Of it's something about yourself that you can't change because you're white. You're saying it's in your DNA. Well, the fact is that at that point, because again, if they can win this, if they can separate people forever, then they have a place politically forever as what they think is a hero. You're not a hero. You're separating people. You're part of the problem, and you're the racist.
Or if you can separate people from by the color of their skin, you're doing so because then you're an eternal victim, and the other person with the other color skin is always the oppressor, and therefore you retain your power base, and that's what it's all about. It's retaining power by dividing people, by lying.
Well, and we've been saying that in the Obama years, especially during his first term, the left believed they had won the world forever, that they had won forever. They believed it wasn't just winning the White House, but they had won everything forever. Then you think about this. It was also, that was about the time that social media was on the rise. And then all of a sudden and we now know how they influenced social media. And of course the leftists that created and run social media and how they control the messaging. Controlling the words is everything. It's why they want to change the definition of words. Change the definitions on everything. You control the language. You control the words and the language. You can control the conversation and the narrative. And to the point that you will be deemed, and they're doing it already in other countries, and they want to do it here, you will be deemed a criminal if you use the wrong pronouns. Freedom of speech gone if they were to have their way. They've said it. Hate speech isn't protected. Ooh, remember Chris Cuomo on that one? That didn't work out very well, did it?
Hate speech isn't protected under the Constitution.
And then 15 hours later, he's still trying to backtrack on it. But this is exactly how they think. This is who they are. They want to, because, look, I want to know who's filled with hate. I think it's important to know if they feel like they need to talk about how much hate they have in their heart, then please let them talk. This is the left will tell you, though, that what we deem as hate speech, which would include, of course, using the wrong pronouns or whatever we deem it. The government will decide what hate is, and we hate the other side. We'll just start with that.
Well, we saw, because you can combine the two topics, we saw that they want to censor speech, not just hate speech, medical speech.
Yes, medical speech.
In fact, any speech they don't agree with, they wish to censor.
Right.
Because they know better than you do.
Yep.
And the only opinion that counts is theirs. 866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Once a roadside inspection is completed, the officer will close it out, which involves the officer writing or typing up the report. The more the officer found during the inspection, the longer this will take. If violations were discovered, most officers, as a courtesy, will explain the violations to the driver. If there were any out-of-service violations, the officer will normally explain what must be done to get the out-of-service order lifted. Drivers need to be very attentive during this part of the inspection. The driver also needs to read and understand the complete inspection report. After receiving the inspection report, the driver has 24 hours to get the roadside inspection report to the motor carrier. If the driver will not be returning to a company facility within the next 24 hours, the driver needs to know to get it on the way to you via email, mail, or fax within 24 hours. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's our Crony, and I'm Gary McNamara. One thing Republicans will be pounding this week, this from Senator Bill Hagerty. Tonight, every single Senate Democrat voted against my amendment that would stop the Biden administration from using taxpayer dollars to charter flights for hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens from their countries directly to American towns to be resettled. Indefensible. End of quote. Here's what he said when he was on the Senate floor the other night. Here we go.
In order to consider my very simple and reasonable amendment, it's vital that the Senate must move the Democrat leader's blocking amendment out of the way in order to move forward with my amendment. Let me cut through the procedural language here. I'm bringing forward a vote on a very simple question. Do you support American taxpayer dollars being used to fly illegal immigrants from countries like Venezuela and Haiti into America to be settled in cities and towns near you? If so, then vote against me. Vote no to preserve this practice of using taxpayer dollars to charter planes that move and import thousands of illegal aliens into your states. Make no mistake here. President Biden has been secretly flying hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens from foreign countries into blue city airports. Just last year alone, in 2023, it was reported that some 320,000 illegal aliens have been flown in using this method.
There you go, 320,000, and I see it's the top headline on Fox. Right. All Senate Democrats vote against barring taxpayer funds to fly illegal migrants to U.S. towns, is the headline in Fox. I'll simply say this. They've been screaming about Governor Abbott. Why aren't they screaming about the president?
Right.
Why did every Democrat who had been screaming at Abbott when we all know, we knew before this that Biden was flying secretly hundreds of thousands of people into the United States? We knew that was already happening.
Yep. And, you know, again.
And that's from their countries directly to American towns.
Right.
This is the app.
Right. Well, and you know, we kind of joked when they said, well, we're going to lower the number of people crossing the border.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what are they going to do? Oh, they'll put them on planes and send them directly here, jokingly.
Understand how radical the Democratic Party is. You want evidence? There it is.
There it is.
Right there.
On record.
On record, proudly. They believe that the American public wants this.
Right.
That's how out of touch they are.
Wow.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Rhode Island Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. As always, we appreciate it. Well, what's the serpent up to lately? James Carville.
He's making his rounds and, I don't know, being angry.
Carville spoke with New York Times opinion columnist Maureen Dowd, where he slammed the Democratic Party's culture of wokeness and censorship.
Mm-hmm.
Ready for this?
All right.
Ready for these quotes? A suspicion of mine is that there are too many preachy females in the Democratic Party.
Oh, that's going to score him some points with the wife.
Yeah. Well, she's a Republican.
I know that.
I know.
Yeah, I think the world knows that.
A suspicion of mine, talking about the Democratic Party, there are too many preachy females.
Mm-hmm.
Don't drink beer. Don't watch football. Don't eat hamburgers. This is not good for you. The message of the Democrats is too feminine. Carville said, if you listen... They don't know where to go.
Plus, they throw like girls.
Honey, you should be watching the WNBA. Oh, my God. If you listen to the Democrat elites, NPR is my go-to place for that. The whole talk is about... Now, this is like, I have to listen to NPR, then he complains about it the whole time.
It's my go-to.
It's my go-to, and the whole talk. Listen, this is Carville. It's my go-to. I have to listen to it. And the whole talk is about how women and women of color are going to decide this election. I'm like, well, 48% of the people that vote are males. Do you mind if they have some consideration? Wow. Oh, well.
Yeah. Remember the whole toxic masculinity?
Yeah?
Yeah.
The big weekend show co-host is from Fox, David McDowell, said the Democratic Party's woes with men is because the party is no longer stands up for masculinity.
Yeah, it's toxic. They'll tell you.
It's about driving men out of the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll point out one thing in all seriousness. The labor participation rate among men has fallen. It's only 2/3 of men that are participating in the labor force. It has just plummeted, and there is honor and dignity in work. And when men do not work, there's something officially wrong with the country. She said, there's only one party that stands up for masculinity and is okay with it, and there's only one party that doesn't.
Yeah, see, Gary, you and I, we missed our time to quiet quit. We missed our opportunity there. So, because now it's frowned upon. Of course, by the stats, we would fit in with more and more men if we're not participating in, and working in the workforce.
I like this. Fox News contributor Joe Concha, also works for thehill.com. We've read his columns frequently. Said Carville was relevant 30 years ago.
I love it.
When he worked for Bill Clinton's 1992 presidential campaign, yet he's on cable news a heck of a lot. And to your point, he demeaned the victims of Bill Clinton by the whole, drag a $100 bill through a trailer thing. He gets rewarded by going on MSNBC and saying a lot. Here's the thing about people. They're not categories. They're not groups. They're not demographics. There is no female vote. There is no Hispanic vote, black vote. It's all about, do you feel inflation and food prices are too high? And rent prices are too high. And gas prices are too high. And crime is too high. And foreign policy you disagree with. And the border that's wide open. It's not about categories. It's about overall human beings not better off under this administration than they were 4 years ago.
But, when you're Carville, that's the creature you are. You live and die by those categories. But if you're on the left, you live and die by those categories. Everyone on the left. Because life isn't about, we understand on strategy what the demographics are, but tell me this is why we've talked about it for years. This is why it's so important to get your message out. The ideas applied to everyone. The idea of expanding wealth. Well, expand wealth for everyone.
And that's
you
why
expand the buying power for every family. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the makeup, origins of your family. It is about everyone doing better, and that's always a good thing. But the left cannot do that. The left needs to separate and make constant victims. Think about that. Going back to, bring up critical race theory again. What is that? Creating permanent victims. Victims.
It's when the left sits there and says, well, the right, they want the jobs, they want all the good jobs, and they want other people to suffer.
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
Why would that make any sense?
Right.
Why would I want any demographic to suffer? If any demographic suffers, that's going to cost me more taxes.
Right.
So let's say I'm just purely greedy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I operate by pure greed, I'm going to get what and by the way, you're saying that you wish to keep more of your taxpayer dollars from what you earn is not greed. Yeah. But if you want to call it greed and say, all right, you're really greedy, well, would you want any demographic of minorities to have massive unemployment? No. You would want everybody to be employed because you're going to have to pay more taxes to support those people.
Mm. Right.
So that doesn't make any sense morally when they say that. Right. Well, you have a job. You don't care if anybody else is. Of course I do.
Yeah, the greediest of the people, if you look at wealth redistribution, if the greediest of the people is promoting that everybody, this is the problem that they have, though. They can't, on the issues, they can't win. If you want to chalk it up to greed, okay, it's greed. Greed means, the richest person wants everybody to do well because they won't have to foot the bill for other people. They're not going to have to, there's not going to be the wealth redistribution if everybody has greater wealth.
Right. But to sit there and say, well, you're a racist, so you don't want them to have good jobs. Well, no, actually, if I was a racist, I would. God, this is such a dumb conversation.
No,
it
really is.
But you have to have it.
Yeah.
You have to.
You have to say these things out loud, like we're talking to children, because we're dealing with children.
Right. Because if I was a racist, then I would want everybody to have a job.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to pay the people that I was racist against in my tax dollars.
It's just.
It's like having to defend it that way is just, God, so ridiculous and stupid. But the fact is, either way, even I'm not a racist, and I don't consider myself greedy, and I still want everybody to work.
Yeah.
So what I really am, and even imagine myself being my worst self, I would still want the same thing in society.
Yeah.
And I want people to be employed because I believe that one of the greatest things that anybody can do is work and be productive.
Yeah.
I believe it completely changes.
It's rewarding beyond the money.
Yes, it completely changes. And I've worked every job out there. Every job. And when you were gone last week, I was telling a lot of the stories about, the unions that I was in, with the whole United Steelworkers endorsing Biden. and everything else. And United Auto Workers is just like, what? And so I've worked every job known to mankind. I've learned in every single job. You see the Hollywood actors and actresses say, so what did you, well, I was a server and I hated it. I couldn't stand it. I never wanted to be a server. I hated every job I had until I became an actor. Now, that wasn't the case for me. Now, some jobs I might not have loved. They were a challenge, and they were scary. This business was scary.
Yeah, right.
Think about the first time. Going to talk radio was scary because I didn't want to do it. And by the way, anyone who's listening on the way to work who is a talk radio host, and we know there are lots of them because they let us know that they listen. Any talk show host that started in radio, probably Rush would say the exact same thing. The day that you were put into talk radio, it was a challenge because you didn't have music to fall back on. It wasn't, okay, we talk a minute or two.
Right.
Or we talk 10 seconds or 15, depending on what shift you work at. A lot of the morning shows now are more talk than they are music because personality sells.
Right.
But the fact is, once you have to do it, the first time, I'll never forget, because I didn't want to do talk radio. I was forced to do it by the owner of the station. I'll never forget. It's 6 minutes after the hour. You need to talk till 17 after. On what? Well, you're the talk show host. I got to decide?
Yeah.
Are you out of your freaking mind?
Yeah, you have to be the one
that
brings all of the ingredients.
No. Give me the cue card with the weather. Give me the other cue card with the promotion we have.
Yes.
And the weather is going to be fine, sunny, and 75. And now don't forget, it's time for Big Check. And if you get the right Big Check, you can win our consolation prize of a vice grip.
Don't forget to tune in every Thursday morning at 7:20.
By the way, that's a true promotion that I was actually involved in at a station one time.
All right.
We had Big Check. You could win like $500. And the consolation prize that you were put in for the $500, you got a vice grip. We were a rock station giving away vice grips. Not making that up. But no, but everything's on a cue card.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, you have nothing in front of you except your mind. And I remember it. It was 6 minutes after, and I talked about everything that was on my mind. And I went, it's got to be close to 17 after because the phones aren't ringing yet. And I look, and it's 11 after. I still have 6 minutes to talk. And the pure panic of your mind's completely blank, and you have 6 more minutes to talk. Now that we've been through we've talked about it, the David Lee Roth 30,000 hours.
Or 50,000 as both of us are concerned.
Yeah, I think it's probably closing on 50,000 hours. You get used to it. I remember the first time in college radio having to talk into the microphone and knowing that the microphone, through the carrier current signal, went to the cafeteria and the student union. It's the only place that it was heard.
Well,
I was scared to death. It took me, I think I played 2 Mott the Hoople songs before I finally talked. The music went down. I went, and I couldn't talk and went to the next record. And then it happened again. And the third time I said, hi, boys and girls. How you all doing? I hadn't entered puberty yet. Yes, I entered puberty late. How you doing? Glad to have you here.
Yeah, it's and now we still talk on our way. We're talking after the show's ended. You can't shut us up.
I'm talking to myself on the way home.
Yeah.
Talking to the cat, trying out material on the cat. It never ends. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's our Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yes, so James Carville. Problem with the Democratic Party, preachy females.
Too bad, ladies. He's not single. Well, and I would argue, preachy everybody.
Yeah, I would agree.
The
Yeah,
entire site is preachy. I don't need to separate it by gender. And but it has been over and over and over again. And I think COVID, so many things ramped up and just became concentrated during that time. But the whole Karen thing during COVID.
Who was it that was a Berkeley professor who told the students, don't date any woman from San Francisco? I got to find that story. That was like, oh, wow.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.